Thabo, and I'm an accountant by profession, by trade, and qualified as a chartered accountant over 11 years ago. And I've just been involved in, a lot of work in public service, public sector, where I trained, but also when I became a business coach, when you have your own practice, you realize a number of things. And one of those things is we can't really have transformation in this country until we as practitioners are willing to work with small, medium enterprises. And that starts with admitting that they are, these small, medium enterprises are really are going to transform the country and create the jobs that need to be created and solve some of the problems that we have. And I want to start with this so that it's clear as we go along. In our firm, we always have this saying that we are not competing with the large or the big four auditing or accounting firms in the country, because they already have their clients, they already have their market, and they've been doing this for hundreds of years. What we are doing, however, is learning from what they did. If I pick one company, Deloitte, you would find that they've been with a client for over 40 years, being the advisors to those boards and the chairpersons and the shareholders for over 40 years. And they started with the client when it was an SME, and they grew with that client. And I think I'm saying that, that's why one of our philosophies has been we collaborate with incubators around the country, and we provide accounting back office support, but we also provide business coaching as a service to our clients and the SMEs. And we find that combination, we also have, consulting advisory, we also have a recruitment company. We are finding solutions for SMEs to then grow. And we believe that it's our mandate as a company to continue doing this. And we hopefully in my lifetime, in my tenure, we would see one or two of our clients listing on the JSE, and for us that would be what success looks like. Our relationship with IBASA is that I'm a qualified business coach and credentialed, but I've also seen how our work in advisory, there aren't a lot of lobby groups for advisory work, and therefore we believe and we find it very appropriate that we need to align ourselves with organizations such as IBASA to further our work and to make our lives easier, because already there's a body of knowledge that's there. All right, thank you so much. So I'm gonna get started. There is a lot that we have put, and in this we're specifically focusing on boards of membership organizations such as IBASA. But as we speak, we'll also now touch on how does it affect our SME clients, and I would appreciate some engagement on that as well. Right? As communicated, we do believe that membership organizations such as IBASA and other lobby groups, they play a very important role in making sure that we have a community, and not just a community, but an effective community where our shared interests, in this case being, the transformation in the SME space, and we provide a platform for like-minded individuals. As you can see around the room right now, we've got a lot of people with a lot of different backgrounds, and we come here to learn, we come here to collaborate, and advocate for the common goals that we have, and that is transformation. So I wanted to pause here a bit, Christoph, because I wanted to make it a bit more interactive and just hear from the members specifically on collaboration, because the coming together part, this is a platform, we have come together, we are like-minded. The collaboration part, I would like to open the floor for anyone who has a testimony about how, being in a space like this has led to some collaborations. Any bite?
Yeah, we can use the text chat, or if someone wants to speak up, they can just raise their hand. There's a way for you to do that, so, and then we can allow you to speak. Anyone that has benefited you? Estelle, we will allow you to talk, so you can unmute.
Good morning, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you well.
Okay, I just maybe want to say that my collaboration is with IBASA itself, and I was part of the CEDA, Ekurhuleni municipality, and IBASA in that mentorship program that they had running the last year, and found it that, I could deliver my expertise as I've been involved for the last 24 years with big companies, empowerment programs for BEE companies. And I myself is a small business company. And I'm nearing sort of retirement, but I think I still have it in me to work till I drop. So I'm very interested always to get involved and bring my expertise, because I still also have clients for the last 20, 15 years that's still with me. It's a handful left, but it's the ones that really complied with all the laws of the country and, doing the right thing. And they themselves are now nearing their pension years, but will also be going strong still. So it really is necessary to have diversity in these programs so that you can really stand by those directors and just lead them on an ethical, lawful way, because that's the only way that their business is going to survive.
I like that.
That's my pound of flesh. Okay, thanks.
All right.
Thanks, Estelle. Yeah, so I mean, we are in an industry where knowledge is important and experience, to pass that down. So it's maybe one of the places that people that are more experienced can add lots of value for those that haven't had the experience. So great to have you reflect on that, and that you were able to participate in the IBASA program, that collaboration. Esther?
Hello everybody. Happy new 2024. Thank you so much. I mean, I've really benefited by actually also being part of this IBASA, body of, you call them brethren, in terms of getting to know about small businesses. And I found myself actually, professionally inputting into a number of individual, little companies. And, I think it was sometime last year, when they called, people prepared a surprise party to come and thank me for all what I've been doing for them. And, I was so surprised, you just said, is it me? I thought it's somebody else. And there they were pouring their accolades. And I said, wow, it's always good to do something, because I mean, when you reflect back, when you thought you were hearing nothing, some people have benefited one way or the other. But this was a great surprise. And thank you so much for this platform.
Thanks, Esther.
Thank you.
Anyone else that want to share, you can quickly raise your hand. We can still maybe allow one more to. We're reflecting on collaboration and partnerships and how we can benefit from that. And we had Estelle and Esther sharing about IBASA collaboration, the program to work with young people.
I saw in the chat, Nico said, my attitude is to collaborate. Our problems are of such nature that incremental solutions, me doing my thing, is not enough. Through collaboration, we can approach the problems and challenges exponentially. And I think that's it also speaks to what we've heard in the last two comments. Now, because we said we're talking about membership organizations, and the benefits of that is to build a community. I just wanted to get a sense of an idea from the room and everyone. You'll see that my presentation style is a bit more different and a bit more engaging. But I want us to then say, what is the value proposition? Why should we collaborate? So how big is the pie that we are trying to take a bite at? And then what are some of how much can we get if we are to collaborate, and in which areas? So what you find is that because obviously IBASA's got its own board, CEDA's got its own board, the Institute also has its own board, and we are members and we belong there. We need to be able to, as members, feed some information to the board to then say, we have identified that according to the BEE Commission's report on supplier enterprise development, that so many billions are available and are not tapped into for Black economic empowerment. I'm just giving an example. And as IBASA, out of, let's say, random figure, 15 billion, I think it's around there, 15 billion, we want to, in this 15, we want the 2 billion. And that 2 billion, this can, as members, how can we then, advise our board to go and lobby for business on our behalf as this community? So I thought maybe we can take, just 5 minutes looking at where are the opportunities that you have seen that the three role players, which are the organizations that are collaborating for this, we can then say, this is an opportunity where we as IBASA, for 2024 and going forward, we can take advantage of. I'm just curious to hear that.
Yeah, so where are the opportunities for IBASA in supporting its members, as opposed to, sort of the benefits that the members can get
Sure.
Collaboration? And we can do the same. If you want to raise your hand, you can do so.
I hope it's not a difficult question.
It is a difficult question if we haven't thought about those opportunities before, but you can use a text chat, friends, and otherwise you can raise your hand. What kind of opportunities, Rendani, will allow you to talk? You can unmute and talk. And just find the...
Okay, okay. I think, can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you.
Thank you, Thabo, for the question, and I hope I have understood you well. My premise has got to do with to answer you by posing a question: which sector of the economy seems to be growing at a significant rate? I think if you look at the energy industry, the renewable industry, there's a lot of activity there. The growth, you look at the purchase of solar panels, imports, and the rate of growth within the renewable space. I think it's an area maybe where IBASA and the partners can explore opportunities. Thank you.
I see. Thank you so much.
Just transition is a big thing, becoming a big thing.
It's a huge thing. It's a huge thing. And Rendani, maybe whilst we still have you on the line, say now we're sitting with the MD of IBASA, right? And he needs to be, texting someone on WhatsApp or sending an email or making a call. What would you wish the conversation could go like? What is it that we would, as members, what can we unlock there?
I think our value add could be to, and I mean this almost a greenfield industry in South Africa. Our role could be the one that you've alluded to yourself, that you've got. You gave an example of the big auditing firms that have been with clients for over 40 years. So I think our role could be to nurture and grow SMME within the renewable space, and and contribute to their growth, and have a relationship and partnership that can be sustainable, not just a hit and run, but the one that you've alluded to say you can grow together. Because for me, my attitude towards collaboration is that I don't think it's a choice. I think that's the nature of things. Nothing can stand on its own. Everything in the world is connected. You know something I don't know. I know something that I know. And because I haven't lived your experience, you haven't lived my experience. Thank you.
Sure. Okay, cool. No, thank you so much. So I like what, as Rendana was talking, I immediately went into, okay, so we can even identify a fund that's available for entrepreneurs in the energy space and deliberately start advocating for that. I don't know if there's any other hand.
Not at the moment.
Okay, cool. No, so something to think about. You can put it in the chat, and then as we continue with this, because we know that a membership organization is community, right? One of the biggest things in a community, one of the other things that we do in incubation is that we incubate alumni associations, right? And in there, you are building a community. And we always give this example of, you have just been given land and it's a new village. And in this village, as the village leaders, you need to, consult with the people and everybody to say, what is it that, what are the things that we would want to achieve in this village? So if we can go back to the slides, Christoph, the first slide, when you do get copies of the slides, and we just go back one, it defines the community. I just wanted us to, for 2024, for every member to keep this, and I particularly just left 2 points on the screen so that it's something that we reflect on, and you can make your own notes as to say, if we are building a community, we know what is the shared interest that's there, or what is the cause that we exist for, and therefore, because we know that cause, in what ways can we improve? And that data, or that kind of input, then gets fed into the board to then say, it would be great. And then the board will then say, for the next 5 years, we'll see how we incorporate these, because it becomes very, very, very important that we do that. Then secondly, coming from an SMME perspective, we notice a lot of SMMEs, especially when we do advisory work. Obviously, every SMME wants an offtake agreement. Every SMME wants to bring in more revenue, right? So one of the questions we ask from a coaching perspective is, what membership organization can you affiliate with as an SMME or group of SMMEs that will then advocate for those common goals that you have, right? So that's one. Two, it will also offer a collaborative space for yourselves as SMME owners, but also you can get into, JVs, you can get into consortiums and such arrangements that will assist the SMME owners to then go into those membership organizations. And the questions that we've kind of shared so far in the last couple of minutes are similar questions that I believe if you pose them to your client, there can be a lot of value that is unlocked for them to be able to bring in more business into the company, to create more jobs, and all of that will contribute to the UN Sustainable Development Goals, and also particularly in South Africa, our agenda in terms of the development plan. So so when you do get the slides, please remember this space is just left so that you can then say, because I belong to the membership organization, here are some things that I'm experiencing on the ground that, we can share with the board so that the board can be aware that these are members' experiences and these are opportunities that they may have to tap into. So thank you so much for that. But very, very important with our clients, if we can, if we can also encourage them or challenge them through whether it's advisory. Yeah, okay. So if we can challenge them to also consider membership organizations, a lot of them would have membership organizations that they can belong to and stuff like that. But then thirdly, there's a third point. There's also an opportunity for us as advisors and practitioners to work with other membership organizations. So you would find that when you speak to a client and you say, what membership organization are you belonging to as part of their revenue enhancement strategy? And they tell you they don't believe in belonging to membership organizations. It's an opportunity for us to also learn about that, that organization and see how we sometimes can, work with those membership organizations so that they can become effective and what they will then do. So let's take the example of the energy. So there may be some membership organizations in energy that were created to work with SMMEs, to fix a particular problem in the SMME space, but it is not working effectively, right? Although the membership organization is typically not what we would call our clients, then it gives us an opportunity to now, approach that membership organization and see how we can collaborate with them as practitioners or work with them as practitioners to make it effective. Once it's effective, it opens up opportunities for more SMMEs, and it also creates opportunities for us as practitioners to have a bigger pool of clients. So just something to think about. We can move to the next slide. Okay, then before we continue on that one, I just wanted to check with everyone on the last 2 points that I've made, especially the point on us unlocking opportunities for ourselves. What are some of the things that come to mind when you think about the clients in a particular sector? Maybe they do belong to an incubator, maybe they do belong to a member organization, and that member organization is, there's a lot of room for them to improve in terms of their effectiveness. And if they were to be effective, they would open up opportunities for us as practitioners to then do our work. I don't know if there's anybody that's got a reflection on that and maybe would want to share. Yeah, Christoph, I'm keeping you busy today.
Yeah, no, keeping me on my feet,
Sure.
my toes. So we can use the text chat again, sort of if you can want to comment in there. Otherwise, you can raise your hand. You want to phrase the question, Thabo, so that maybe those that have woken up now to listen for the question.
So I can use a small example, right? In the NGO space, the reason why we have an incubator for social enterprises is because we identified that a lot of the NGO member organizations are not as effective. And we collaborated with one, and we were able to use our experience to improve how the member organization works. And now the member organization has increased from having 100 members to having, say, 500 members. And those 500 members, we would then be able to do their accounting. Our accounting firm now is able to provide those solutions. So that's just an example of how we, by studying the market, we were able to identify what do you call a roadblock or a blockage, and then we played our role there, and it unlocked a lot of clients for us. So it's just something that I wanted to share with everyone in the room to then say, when you've got time, that's something to also consider. Not just our own membership organizations, but the membership organizations that our potential clients may belong to, and then how we can collaborate with them to open up opportunities. All right, cool. So, Christoph, you got that one.
Yeah, we don't have any volunteer.
That's cool.
I mean, Rendani has got a view on this as well. Thanks, Rendani, for your responsiveness. We'll allow you to talk.
Sure.
Thanks, Christoph. I hope you can hear me. Thabo, I couldn't agree more with you, because when you first indicated that the market size in the, I think, enterprise development space, or BE, something like that, was 15 billion, yes, what came to my mind was that that it doesn't have to stay 15 billion. We can grow it. And to me, that is one practical way, although I don't have a practical example of as of now, but there are some blockages that you can unblock in order to tap and grow into a particular market. So I just want to align myself strongly with what you're saying, although I don't have a definite proposal as to what to do. But I'm definitely sure that what you have done in the social sector can surely be done in, for example, in the energy space. Sometimes there's some upfront work, pro bono work, that you need to do in order to go and benefit down the line. It's not everything that is low-hanging fruit. Thank you.
Yeah, and thank you so much. So then it brings me to the next slide, Christoph, where obviously we can task the board members of the organizations we belong to unlock these opportunities. However, what we find with membership organizations is that they don't have a lot of resources. And therefore, as a result, what Rendani was also alluding to, a lot of that pro bono work. Now we need to establish committees or working groups that will support the board to be able to carry out such a function. So if Rendani is available, maybe it's 1 hour a month, we can go one slide back. And then we will then assist the board through a committee or working group that will then, push for this and put in the work. So on the next slide, we're just talking about board committees and the role that they play, right? And there, what we've said is that the relationship between the board committees and the board, it's like that of our nerve systems, our central nervous system, where the board is the brain because they focus more on the strategy, the direction, and the decisions that the organizations need to take to get to that. They do a lot of the oversight and the performance of the company. And then the committees, the sensors. So that the sensory system that feeds information to the board to enable them to make informed decisions. So if, say, for example, I'll give an example. In 2015, I still work for the Office of the Auditor General, and the Auditor General is a member of what they call the International Organization of Supreme Audit Institutions. So all the Auditor Generals in the world, or what they call Supreme Audit Institutions, would get together, and then they would say, we can see that the labor practices in the world, in certain areas, like in the US, for example, in Europe, they're going to have a shortage of, because of their population stats, they're going to have a shortage of accountants. So, and we're going to now need to start borrowing from each other and working, whether it's virtually or sending people over to those countries. How do we then come up with a competency framework that then standardizes what are the common things that a auditor or an accountant should be like? And in 2015, we were in Oslo, in Norway, and we had to come up with a competency framework. And with that competency framework, we're able to come up with something, and then we'll give it to the board, and then the board will now make informed decision based on these are, the people that were in the room. All of us were serving on committees or boards that have to do with the competence of auditors or accountants in our countries. So that then, you know, empowered that organization, at the board of that organization, to make informed decisions and to come up with programs that to this day, you know, we're able to standardize the quality of an auditor or the quality of an accountant. And the good news out of this is that now the South African chartered accountant is seen is number one in the world. And we are able to export ourselves into as many countries as possible. So that's just one of the ways that a board committee, so having experts in any, you know, experts in this membership body that have to do with energy or that are involved in the energy space, and then we bring them there and we create a committee or working group that will, you know, assist the board. We'll go into other committees now to get into more detail. Now, central to the board and the committees is the company secretary. That is the spinal cord. So the board is the brain, the committees are the sensory systems that feed information. Now, the company secretary then is that spinal cord that supports both of them. The company secretary advises and guides and creates a pathway of information. And it allows them. So two things to note: advises and guides. So other than doing administrative work, the company secretary is expected to empower the board through advisory and guidance to make sure that they get to the correct decision. Very important with this is when we look at these boards, right? I'm going to start at IBASA and then we're going to go to how can this be applicable at SMME. Is that the secretary or the secretariat needs to be available for all meetings. And I remember we had one board secretary who was so good at this. So if we are discussing something at a board level that was discussed at a committee level, they would be able to say, oh, this was already discussed. Here's a resolution that committee has, these were the deliberations. So it created so much effectiveness for us, because then we don't need to waste time. We've got a central figure, that our spinal cord, that's able to connect everything that's happening and make sure that we are also functioning very well, right? And later we'll then talk about the performance of the secretariat and such. So when we do review the secretariat, let's ensure that, you know, that effectiveness, and in terms of, you know, the King 4, we've got governance experts in the room as well. You know, how can we support our membership organization to make sure that decision making is very swift, it's very fast, because we would have already identified that we want to get into the energy sector. There are certain things that we need to do to get there, or to tap into that 2 billion rand fund, and the effectiveness of the company secretary then becomes very crucial, so that we don't have avoidable mistakes or avoidable delays that are in there, right? So using the same analogy, you know, the conclusion there is, if these functions are, if the spinal cord, the brain, and the sensory system are not connected and they're not working properly, you would find that organism doesn't have much life, and over time it may cease to exist. So that's more on the membership basis. What we find with SMMEs, maybe on the medium enterprises, you do find that, you know, now they're in a position where they wish to have a board, because, you know, the CEO is letting go of a lot of the responsibilities, and they're more focused on strategic. And sometimes they'd want to know whether the board is an advisory board or it's a board that's put together by shareholders. But in the medium enterprise space, we are seeing a shift towards, you know, entrepreneurs and shareholders wanting to establish boards, and not so much at an SMME level, so at a small enterprise level. And at that level, the need is still there. What you will see with a lot of incubators, when they do what they call a gap analysis, and they look into a small company, one of the things that they look at is compliance with the Companies Act. And the Companies Act is very strict in terms of what is it that they expect you, what kind of meetings. So if we register a company with the CIPC, we already know we get a memorandum of incorporation, and in there it already tells us that there needs to be certain mandatory meetings, there need to be certain mandatory things that are done, whether it's production of financial statements and policies, procedures, and all of those. When we do work with SMMEs, as far as possible, we do, and as far as practical, we would then advise them to adopt some of the Companies Act practices very early on when the companies are small. I'll give you an example. From an accounting back office support, we have a 12-month program where the SMMEs and the SMME owners have to produce management accounts. It is when you are a one-man show and you're owning a small business, you don't want to send yourself reports, because you already know where the problems are. But in the 12 months, what we start seeing is every month when we start producing these accounts for them, the attitude kind of shifts, and it shifts in a very big way, because now we are seeing why they are productive, but there isn't money in the business. They can see how their assets are losing value, and now they can make decisions about when do we replace these things. How can I, or simple things. I was giving an example the other day to accountants to say, sometimes calculating things like if you sell 1,500 units, you no longer need to go out in the market. You will break even, right? You don't need to worry about money anymore. Now you can now get into a profitability. Something like that, just unlocking that small number for them becomes very, very crucial. So one of the things that I believe IBASA continues to advocate for and should continue to advocate for is improving governance practices for the small, medium entities. Once they start doing management accounts every month, these small business owners, and get to see the numbers and ask these other questions, not only do their businesses improve, but after 12 months, a lot of them now start wanting to have a full-time accountant working in the company, right? And in the 12 months, the practices that we've been doing with them allow them to establish what we call controls to make sure that when they hire a new person, there's already templates that they can use. The entrepreneur, from an effective communication perspective, the entrepreneur can be clear with the accountant what is it that they want, what kind of information they would want, and what kind of decisions they would like to get to get assistance with from their new accountant. So I think we need to then look at that and then say there may be an opportunity for us to speak to a CEDA, say, for example, to then say, as a collective, as a community, we've got so many practitioners that are in this space, and we would like to improve governance for SMMEs. Why am I saying this? In closing, if you remember the panic that was caused last year when SARS said to people, you registered a company, and ever since you registered it, you've never filed any tax returns. And there was a huge panic in the country. And that's an opportunity for us. It also showed us that there's an opportunity for us to reduce that kind of panic and anxiety for entrepreneurs, and also an opportunity for us to generate revenue and create more jobs. So I'm going to pause there before we move to the next slide for reflections. Sorry, Christoph, because we're not seeing hands, we can go to the next slides and then we will, yeah. Okay. So now the responsibilities of a board, I think we've spoken, we've touched on them, but focusing on organizational growth, right? we all agree that we understand the problem that any IBASA is solving, right? So let's talk about growth. What does growth look like? As members, we would need to define and be clear to our board that growth for us is in the number of members, for example. We want our membership to grow. We want our influence and our impact to be visible. I think in one of the social enterprises that was a big thing to say we need to demonstrate the impact. So the outcome from that was that they then aligned themselves with the UN Sustainable Development Goals and said, we're going to measure ourselves in terms of if we're saying we are reducing hunger, in what way is our growth reducing that hunger? So is it growth in membership? Is it growth in money? Growth in terms of, we're no longer getting audit findings and stuff like that. But the board's responsibility is to make sure that we are growing. We will meet our mission and our strategic objectives, ensure that we are complying as far as possible, but most importantly, with not just regulatory, but ethics, right? And when we look at ethics, let's look at both ethics. There's an ethics that we don't talk about, and that's the ethics of not showing the world the amazing things that we do. I call it an ethic. Because sometimes there are so many negative stories in the world. There are so many negative stories of why our organizations are not working. And the positive things that we do are not quite out there. And you see with the move to ESG and impact reporting, I think it would add a lot of value for member organizations to start reporting. It also gives us the pressure to re-look at our goals and to look at where we have paced ourselves. Then the last thing is member-centric decision making. The decision making of the board needs to be focused on the members, right? Whether it's direct in terms of the technical know-how that the members will be getting, but also how do we make sure that we are the preferred brand? So if you look at the South African Institute of Chartered Accountants, for them to campaign themselves to be #1 in the world was because, if you went through the Zondo Commission, they were... Sorry, there's a... Sorry, can you please mute? I don't know who that is. Christoph, over to you. All right, cool. Sorted. So when you look at the Zondo Commission, this institute was in a lot of trouble because there's a famous clip of, but you're a chartered accountant, and the organization had to make, member-centric decisions in terms of how they deal with that, but also how they go out and market their members, the members' designations to be the best, not only in South Africa, but in the world. So that as a member, when I walk into a room, the fact that you've seen that I'm a member, I don't really have to do much. I don't have to say much. If there's any conflict, if there's any competition in the market, the board needs to make decisions that ensure that our membership, gets a bigger piece of the pie than last year. I saw there was something in the Q&A. Okay, cool. This is quite, Teddy asks, how do we ensure that the company secretary is not involved in collusion by sidelining other committee recommendation? Whoa, this is a this is a deep one. We will get to a section where we talk about the company secretary, and I'll also open up the floor for other colleagues that are experts in this, and then we can reflect. We can go to the next slide. Okay. Now, again, the role of the board is to make sure that they govern properly like a government, right? I know when we say this in training, people don't want to hear it, that, the board is government, that the board is government, and they need to make sure that it's, that the governance, is proper. And luckily for us, we've got, governance recommendations and practices through King 4, and then provide leadership as well. You know, the board needs to lead and monitor that performance, and make sure that at the end of the day we meet the strategic goals, and this community, we are able to serve it. Policy development is very, very key. A lot of the times when we talk about policy development, we look at the policies just in the organization, right? And I think everybody in here already understands that. But I wanted to take a step and say, when we look at policy development, also consider and support your board in policy development of the country or the market or the clientele that you are servicing. It's very important that you get, if there's a, give an example, if there's a new bill on SMME development, we need to be involved in assisting the board and giving comments in that. And whoever say it's parliament, right? They need to know that, okay, we've gotten feedback from IBASA. Now that's a stronger brand than if I were to go there myself. And you need to deliberately check that you support the board in advocating for policies that will increase the value proposition of your organization or member benefits. Lastly, the strategic planning of the organization. There, I want to focus critically on the stakeholders. Once we have defined the stakeholders for ourselves to say, we want to particularly work with the NGO sector. We also want to work with the SMME sector. We also want to work with government. We also want to work, and with each one of those, you will then be able to say, what is it that you want from there? And although we have given this to be the role of the board, a lot of the time, there's a disconnect between the board and its members, right? The same way we would see with SMMEs, right? So SMMEs would say, when we look at the first one, governance and leadership, who's providing the governance and the leadership is usually the entrepreneur, right? But the entrepreneur, as they grow, and we see this a lot, give an example in the mining industries, if you go to the villages and the townships where the mines are, you find that there's a lot of SMMEs, and there's, I know Anglo American committed 3 billion to the local economy, right? And those entrepreneurs, some of them are already making over 50 million. They've got managers, but the managers are not necessarily involved. They're not necessarily the board, right? And one of the things that I've seen in one organization was that they kind of brought the managers into a mentor position that, in the absence of a board, played a similar role to a board. So even when we talk about policy development, our SMMEs, some of the reasons why they don't comply, so a comment earlier about non-compliance, is because we don't have policies. Some of the reasons why we would make losses and would fight with employees and lose at CCMA is because we don't have proper policies. And lastly, on strategic planning, all of us know here that our role is a lot of SMMEs and medium companies, when it comes to strategic planning, sometimes they don't spend a lot of money on it. They don't spend a lot of effort on it. And it's something that I think when we do advise and when we work with them, we kind of need to see how we can support them to ensure that, one, their involvement is more on the strategic things, but doing those, yearly plan, the quarterly plan, the monthly plans, those things then become very important in feeding the long-term goals of the organization. So something that I think we should really be mindful of. Christoph, you can go to the next one. Okay, right. So again, when you look at the board obviously needs to now understand what regulations are there and what are the applicable laws that are there. And And this is where the company secretary also becomes very central, but also the balance in the board becomes very important. That in the board, because we've got different skill sets, you would have people that have a legal background. One of the things that we find, I'll give you an example with the social enterprises, is some of the beneficiaries or incubatees may not necessarily know of the laws, like a law such as BEE, and laws that support corporate social responsibility. And therefore, when they did their business models, because they don't understand those laws that are applicable in the industry, they could not identify the opportunities that were there, e.g., grant funding, for example. And the minute we do a holistic exercise of comparing the organizations with other organizations and reading those annual reports, we find that then they become aware of, oh, there's such and such a law that empowers this, and there's funds that are available of this, and they can tap into that. So as a board, when you look inward, obviously you need to look at all the laws that are applicable to you, but a lot of the time, but the focus shouldn't be on whether you comply with those laws, because that one I think we do very well, right? The second part is that we also need to identify laws that are empowering to us, that can open up opportunities. And once we understand those, we've set our direction, we've set our tone, and everything is working. Now we need to then say, we've got the policies. Through the policies, we've got controls that make sure that all the risks that the organization faces, we can minimize. And then lastly, the decision making. Is it ethical? And I think we've kind of touched on this. On ethics, I think one of the practices and the advice that we give is you may need to keep an ethics register. What we mean by this is what we call an ethics dilemmas register, where it's almost like a library of the kinds of dilemmas that, in a business like this, you most likely run into. How were they resolved in the past? And we believe that, having a knowledge management of that sort, assists a lot of organizations to be a bit more proactive in terms of their approach to dealing with ethics and risk, because everyone in the organization will understand what risk is. Just want to give a very stupid example. So in setting exams in the accounting, I'm an exam setter for one of the NQF level 8 qualifications. And one of the exams we set was an ethics exam, and the results there, what we got out of it is how ethics is misinterpreted. Not in, so what the students did there is they over-applied ethics. I'll give you an example. Christoph and I are members of IBASA, and Christoph sits on a board somewhere. Must he recuse himself? Must he not recuse himself? It's not material. But a lot of students would lean more towards, hey, they know each other. Hey, it can be seen as corruption. It can be seen as ethics. Someone was telling me last week that this particular CFO, they went to school with the CFO, and once they put in a bid, the CFO then said, no, I know this one, I was in class with them, besides the fact that we are friends. So there's typically an over-application of ethics sometimes that get in the way of SMMEs advancing. And I think that's another topic. I think at the end, I can open up the floor and we can engage on that. But when you look at ethics, I think please just be mindful of having that ethics dilemmas register, so that your members know that your members kind of understand the kinds of dilemmas your organization has faced before and how they've been dealt with. And I think it creates a lot of effectiveness, because it establishes principle. So thank you for that, Christoph. We can go to the next slide. Right. Now, goal setting is very, very important. Again, the goals need to be smart, but but more importantly, the goals need to be set in line with consultation with the members, right? Then, excuse me. Secondly, member engagement is very, very important. So we find that boards sometimes set goals, and the goals and the members later say that this goal is not specific to me, or it's not applicable. You should have chosen this goal, because the engagement between the members and the board is not as robust. So what we have seen in organizations that are very successful is that there's a lot of consultation from the board. There's a lot of consultation from the executives, through communication. They keep the members involved, they keep the members informed, they keep the members, they consult the members. And what it does is that as a member, I feel valued and my input is taken in, and I can be active, right? So something to look into is that resource allocation, obviously, in terms of budgeting, in terms of, employees, in terms of time, and that becomes very important. And obviously monitoring the performance of the organization. Thank you, Christoph. We can move to the next one. All right. Budgeting we've spoken about, but the fiscal responsibility, very, very important. Money is key, we all know. And because member organizations don't see themselves as businesses, right? A lot of the fiscal responsibility and a lot of the business acumen kind of sometimes leaves the room. So luckily in this room, we've got a lot of people that, work in this space, right? And that's why that member engagement between the board and the members becomes very critical, because then we can bring in some of these things into whether it's our budgeting or our fiscal responsibility, right? So when we go to the SMMEs, right, I want to talk about budgeting quite a little bit. A lot of SMMEs don't understand. Actually, they're not keen. Even me, sometimes I'm not keen to do a budget because there's no business that's coming or whatever. But the reality is, by reviewing all the current contracts and all the existing POs, I'm able to then see what life is going to look like for the next 3 months, right? And then it empowers me to know that we're going to be 25,000 Rand short. What do I do now that I know that I'm 25,000 Rand short in March, right? Just if everything goes according to plan, in March, I'm going to need 25,000 Rands, okay? In which area of our business is that? During which time will we have, people, available capacity? Then lastly, what is happening around March? Oh, a lot of companies would have, their year ends either in December or in February. Therefore, there's an opportunity for us to market ourselves and go out there and bring in more clients that we can do books for. Then through just reviewing that budget, I'm able to make a decision that will then, reduce that 25,000. Maybe from this exercise, I get 18 and I'm still 7,000 Rand short. Okay, maybe I can do business coaching and new budgets in government, new budgets in other companies. We tap on the door, and before you know it, by doing this analysis, I'm able to make better, more informed decisions. So I think even when we do speak to the SMMEs, it becomes very critical that we ensure that they have that. And even within the member organizations that we belong to, that budgeting and planning be used as a tool like that. On the boards that we're also sitting on, if we're sitting on a board or a committee, you are co-signing on that budget. And sometimes, ExCo has a tendency of just putting numbers there. Let's scrutinize them for sanity. Let's scrutinize them for whether it displays our ambition, it speaks to our ambition or not. So I'll leave it there, and then we can go to the next slide. Okay, then a bit more time on this one. I think we spent a bit more time earlier just talking about how, a member organization can keep their members involved, right? And then we've also, made a point about, why is it important for us to engage, right? So it becomes very important. And that's why in a board, we'll probably need someone who's in comms, who understands, how do we personalize our engagement? What kind of service provider, what kind of software do we need to keep our members engaged? What kind of feedback mechanism do we have? How can we get feedback from our members, not just once a year? Maybe we can do it quarterly. Maybe we can do it after we have just done an event or this or that. But otherwise, how do we make sure that our members are satisfied and we can improve on our service? But also, most importantly, how do we create a culture where the members feel confident that they have an open line to the board, and obviously with certain limits, which will ensure that my inputs are taken in. And then lastly, community building initiatives. And I think we spoke about collaboration earlier when we started, and connecting as members becomes very, very important. What are some of the community building initiatives that are there? When you look at other institutes, they've got what they call a peer review system, where if Derek and I are practitioners as business advisors, every quarter we are accountability partners, and I still need to check, in with Derek. Derek, how are you doing? Where are some of the? So we have a buddy system that allows us to stay competent on a technical level, right? But also to be able to share some of those skills that we are learning and inputs, but also mentorship programs. Do we have mentorship programs? Are we able to identify our members and say that these are the members that are in this industry? We know what is the number, and therefore, if we've got 80 members that are involved in, particularly in accounting, say, how can we connect them for them to collaborate? Or how can we even talk to them to understand what are some of the things that from an accounting perspective, there are opportunities that we can unlock for them. So those community building initiatives are very, very important. For one of the alumni associations, we have a running club. When we were talking about community building initiatives, they came up with a running club, they came up with a debate team, and then these debate teams are also going to go into schools, because we have seen that a lot of the subjects that students are running away from, they need critical thinking. So they identified debate chairs and some other activities that will assist that. So what it does, it also strengthens the community building initiatives, because your members are just there as well. Okay, cool. So we will move on to the next slide. I'm almost done. The board's performance is very, very important, and members need to check that this is happening properly. Regular assessments of boards. This is usually done at the board level. The continuous development of those members, and some of the feedback. We've spoken a lot about feedback throughout the presentation, so I'm not really going to touch on that. But this feedback must not only be from members. There needs to be feedback from CEDA. There needs to be feedback from other stakeholders that we've identified at the beginning to say, what are some of your insights? And those insights kind of also need to be communicated to the members, and therefore we kind of see how we are doing. So you see a lot of member organizations, or a lot of SMMEs, or a lot of us in our own organizations. We do have those stakeholders, but that feedback is usually missing. And one of the things that I like about stakeholder feedback is that it also gets the stakeholder to think, because in a feedback form, you'd say, what are some of the things that you think we can do better going forward? What are other areas of collaborations that we can get into. And once you get that kind of data, when you ask your stakeholder that, they can even tell you what they are willing to do for the organization and for the relationship. Next slide, Christoph. Right. So these are mostly just for information purposes, but obviously educational qualifications are important. The leadership and strategic vision. Let not the membership of the board be based on popularity, but also be based on, an individual skill set, demonstrated leadership and stuff like that. So we find that in member organizations, you've got a lot of people, of members that are qualified, but they would never want to stand up. It's a challenge that we as members need to then say, how do we create a culture where only the best of the best leaders can come in with that strategic vision and thrive. Again, commitment to governance is a very, very, very important thing. And that's why popularism shouldn't be a deciding factor when you are appointing a board, right? Also, we look for people that can achieve those organizational goals, make sure that our stakeholders are confident in us, but also make sure that the organization, earlier we spoke about growth, it does not remain stagnant. We can innovate. So that also becomes very, very important. So as we're saying this, also think about your SMMEs, because they would want an advisory board. And these are just some of the inputs you can give to them. Now, there are some committees that we believe are very, very important. In a big organization, you should have a nominating committee that is responsible for nominating people, and then an evaluation committee that evaluates, those that are there. We can skip to the nominees. We can skip to the next one, because I want to open the floor for questions, right? Very important, ensure that there's diversity, not just by race, but also diversity in terms of skills and background, because I think we talk about that in exposure. I always say that on the boards that I sit on, a key deciding factor, and part of the reasons why people would want me on the board, is because of I come from the township. And sometimes in these boards, there's not someone who comes from a township, and they want to penetrate the township market. And when you add my education and everything else, and the diversity of my experience, that also becomes a plus. So ensuring that diversity is very, very important. There's a lot of, and when you ensure the diversity, you also need to kind of invest in making sure that everybody is trained on diversity and can overcome their own biases, and we can align all our expectations for everyone that's on the board. We can skip to the next. Okay, I see I've got 10 minutes. Okay, then transparency, don't worry. The other ones are just for information. Okay, so Crystal, we lost you there. Okay, transparency is very important, and accountability. That's why a person's track record is very key, and continuous assessment of whether are we still on the right track, are we performing accordingly. I promise that we'll talk about company secretariat, so it's coming. We can go to the next one. It speaks about audit committee. Next slide. Okay, the company secretary, sorry. Yes, we already said this is the spinal cord. In this slide, when you do get it, you're going to get the functions, which includes, drafting the terms of reference, not only for the board, but also the committees, agendas, meeting packs, minutes, resolutions, and stuff like that. You'd be shocked how many organizations that are big, where minutes take longer than what's stipulated in the, in the documents, strategic documents, and decision making is frustrated. I know some companies where we would go to an audit committee or a board meeting, but by the time EXCO sits to unpack, minutes of that meeting are not available. So again, we spoke about the advisory function. everybody relies on we said the company secretary is the spinal cord. So I think I just wanted to get to point out that when decisions are taken and they are not in alignment or they're illegal or unethical, that's where the board secretary, is expected to point out. And if there's ever a time where we have not complied, we need to take the company secretary to task to kind of just find out as well, but also strengthen our controls to make sure that we no longer have issues like this going forward. We can skip to the next one. The audit committee, very, very key. King tells us how that must be done, and it says at least 3 of those must be independent, and they must have the financial literacy skills and experience. You'd be shocked what we see in the market, because a lot of times, I think there was another question of board members who are they accountable to. A lot of the times it's the shareholders, because the board members represents the shareholders or proxies. The function, and we find that some of these financial literacy skills and experience to execute are not there, right? They need to assist the board in financial reporting and sustainability. They are involved in the auditors' appointments, their fees, their terms. They also are there to referee and ensure that the auditors, if they do any non-audit services, there are limits and precautions that are put in there. And they also give a report in the annual financial statements to say this is how we've carried out our functions. And the board might also give them other certain tasks. So what you will see in practice is that it's not just the audit committee, it will be audit and risk. So the board will give those risks there because the auditors are the ones that report on the risks. So we're good. Another very important thing, especially for member organizations, is a social and ethics committee. And this is one of those where, especially our members who, we've got that heart, where we focus on social and economic development, good corporate governance, ESG, consumer relations, and labor and employment. We can, volunteer ourselves to go and serve in those capacities and again, you only have 4 meetings a year. So it's not as hectic, but the community will be engaged. Christo, the next one. Remuneration committee. This then determines, how is everybody remunerated, but also how do we set up a remuneration policy for the whole organization? How do we make sure remuneration is fair, transparent, and responsible? And they also give an opinion in the annual financial statements. Christo, we should be almost at the end. That is it. Ladies and gentlemen, that is me. Thank you so much. I see there's a lot of questions in there, a lot about CPD. Christoph, over to you.
Yeah, we won't necessarily ask you to answer CPD questions around CPD, but maybe Derek and Javi, our MDs in the room too. So Derek, maybe if you want to put your camera on, you can also participate. But we don't have much time, so maybe if there are people that are interested in staying on, you're welcome to over the hour. But we do understand that it was booked until 1, so maybe some may have other commitments to attend to.
Commitments, yeah.
But there were a few questions too in the Q&A.
Okay.
I had a thought about when you spoke about the appointment of directors, sort of the inclination for the memorandum of incorporation saying that directors need to be members. What is your take on that? That you can perhaps have independent directors serving on a body like ours and bringing certain competencies that actually may accelerate the contribution to the value proposition. Sort of not necessarily being involved in the details of a member as such.
Sure. Yeah. So quick one on that one. If you follow the King 4 recommendations in terms of corporate governance, it does advocate for independence as well. So it is best practice for member organizations to have their members serving in the board, but also to have independent people to come in and provide that independence because it benefits the organization.
Yeah. And Esther's question then is how to motivate members then, sort of to actually dedicate themselves to serve on the board. What are the incentives, if they are, for members to step up and I will contribute as well?
I like that. What I like is the fact that we already have, so one of it is social network. So you increase your social network. Two, you develop as a leader because you've got that experience, you've got reference and that. And then I think thirdly, one of the ways to recruit members is to make sure that when we talked about community building initiatives, if we've got mentorship, and once I experience what it's like to live in this village and be involved in the village of IBASA, I will always feel, now that my feelings are involved, I know that we can do more, because the problem with membership organizations is always someone's responsibility to serve on the board, and me, I'll just benefit because I'm paying membership fees. So you also want to create that value proposition out there and not be shy to provide your members with social capital, because that's very, very important. If I'm able to meet a CEO of a company because I sit by virtue of sitting on a board or a committee, there's nothing wrong with it. We can always have coffee outside, and it works obviously within the bounds of ethics. Over to you, Crystal.
Right. No, so you promised, Teddy, you're going to come back to that question about
yes.
If the company secretary plays such a key role, how do you make sure that the company secretary stays objective and independent from whatever the going-ons may be in terms of board dynamics?
Rule number one is, I always say, never take anything personal, even if it is personal, right? So what you will do is everything then becomes evidence-based, right? Is the company secretary capturing everyone properly? Because it's going to show, let's look at the output of a company secretary. It's going to be the minutes, it's going to be the resolutions, it's going to be the agendas, it's going to be the advice, right? That balance in the board also assists in that you don't have a cabals. I wanted to say, what do we call them? Factions, right? So what you would want to do is to also be able to communicate when you can see something that's creating faction, and respectfully and in a very professional way raise those issues and highlight the risks that come with them. And if you can see that it's now becoming material, this issue, you can formally then write and then say, let's resolve this issue. The minute it's documented and there are outcomes, usually things work better from there. But thank you so much to everyone and the organization for inviting me. I thoroughly enjoyed the session and hanging out with you guys. Looking forward to more.
Thank you.
And I'm applying to be a member, by the way. So yes.
Okay. So by the time the AGM happens, you'll be able to vote too. There are a few questions relating to membership and so on. So Vino, you can connect with IBASA through the website. It's quite clear there what the process is in terms of being certified within a certain designation. And Francis is asking about governance courses and so on, which is perhaps IODSA's realm, sort of. So perhaps if that is a space that you want to move into, IBASA is more focused on business advising, mentoring, coaching than it is on building competencies as directors. So there are perhaps that collaboration in which you spoke about between different bodies too. If that's the answer to you, France, I hope. And we've got two more questions. How do you get hold of Thabo?
LinkedIn is the quickest way, but I'm also I can share my number. Christoph, so if you've got I'm going to type it in here. It's 073, very simple number to everyone. 073 567 3000. 073 567 3000. It's almost like a toll-free number. So you can reach out to me there through WhatsApp, through SMS. If you try to call me, sometimes I might be in sessions, but yeah, I'll get back to you. That's me.
I know we are a minute over time already, but maybe we can quickly answer Nosipo's question. She asked if staff members can also serve on the board.
With staff members?
If staff members can also serve on the board.
Staff members, say of IBASA, if we're using IBASA as an example. Yes. So that's an interesting one. First, it depends on your MOI, because some of the staff members may be members themselves, but the CFO, the CEO, and then some of the exco is usually invited on the board to form part of that, for staff members, generally no, other than those that are in executive, because those are strategic conversations that are being held, and you'd want that division of powers between the two.
Yeah, but often the CEO may also be a board member.
There we go. Yes. Yeah.
Great stuff. So yeah, that was a mouthful, and it leads up to the IBASA AGM in a month or so. So thank you very much, Thabo, for sharing that with us. I see comments saying that people enjoyed the presentation and the detail of sharing that you've done. Yeah, the conversations here keep going, you know, sort of. So this is a CPD event for IBASA too. So watch out for the email that you may receive as proof of attending this event, and then you can use that also as proof for meeting your CPD requirements as a
I'm going to take a picture. All right.
Great stuff.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye, everyone. Have a good...
Hi, Christoph.
Oh, yeah, I've been trying to get you. I thought it may not be...
No, you were trying a video, but unfortunately, I'm on load shedding. I could not collect. And yeah, just to say thanks to Mr. Thabo for agreeing to be here, and also to everybody for joining. I hope that this would pave way and lay foundations for us to have a clear understanding. And we're going to have, yes, future events similarly, as we are looking at bolstering collaborations and governance and strengthening IBASA and any other organizations that I believe that were in attendance, especially GEP. We really appreciate. We saw your presence, our colleagues from GEP. And we really appreciate, and we are looking forward. We expect our communications with regard to AGM and the special meetings that we are scheduled already, but also for opportunities, because we are working on some projects which we are going to send communication to members with regard to mentors that we may need, and any other service providers. We'll make sure that we advertise before we can even do selection process. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you. That was Derek and Javi, by the way. If it's not a voice out of the clouds, but yeah, as load shedding affects all of us in different ways. But thanks, Derek, and thanks for organizing this. Everyone, see you soon, and stay well, stay healthy, look after yourself so that you can give the value to our small business clients, who ultimately are the reason why we are here in the game of business advising. Bye-bye, everyone.